Good gaming, everyone. I'll try not to hold you for too long. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll get you in and out of here faster than you can say.
Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived.
The insinuation and belief that Nintendo creates and PlayStation takes has been adopted by both internet fanboys and gaming media professionals across the internet, the likes of Watch Mojo, The Gamer, and Gaming Bros. However, the idea that the inspiration between the two companies are one-sided and not mutual is intellectually lazy and misinforming for the gaming public. Not being able to find anyone to challenge this misleading notion, I felt it was up to me to course correct. So today, I'll uncover the top 10 times Nintendo ripped off Sony. Number 10, the share button. With the meteoric rise of video game broadcasting on websites like Twitch and YouTube, PlayStation wanted to make a streamlined way for PlayStation gamers to interact with these websites and stream their games directly from the PlayStation. Thus, with 2013 coming and releasing the PlayStation 4, PlayStation brought to us the share button and the share factory. PlayStation even took it a step further by allowing viewers of the broadcast to interact and affect your games. Dead Nation, for example, allowed viewers to vote on in-game mechanics and events to change the broadcaster's gameplay in real time. And if you didn't want to share your console captures, it could always be used as a video or photo album to replay old captures for yourself. Nintendo, following this example, created their capture button, allowing players to capture images and videos, save and edit for yourself, or share them on your social media. Number 9, Blu Ray Discs. Much of Nintendo and Sony's video game history is surrounding the advent of compact disc gaming and storage devices, developed by Philips and Sony themselves. For many years, Nintendo refused to follow Sony's footsteps in adopting the digital format until the release of the GameCube, where they created mini versions of the optical discs Sony were using at the time, and then fully embracing it with the Wii U, creating a disc based on Sony's Blu Ray technology. Number 8, controller grips. One of the more underrated innovations in video game controllers are the controller grips. Not only giving you a comfortable grasp on the video game controller, but also subconsciously mimicking the feeling of holding a sword, a firearm, or other objects while gaming. PlayStation brought this to the industry with the original PlayStation 1 in 1994. Nintendo followed suit with the release of the Nintendo 64, introducing us to their own controller grips in 1996, and seemingly trying to dodge any criticism of mimicking their rival by adding to the design with 3 controller grips instead of 2. But ultimately, the third grip was essentially useless and only a visual differentiation from Sony. Number 7, augmented reality. First introduced with the PlayStation 2 in 2003. With the purchase of a PlayStation iToy, gamers could play games in mixed reality by interacting with digital images they saw on their screens blended with their own living rooms. Later, this technology was implemented into their handhelds like the PSP and the PS Vita. Nintendo adopted this creation, fostering some of their most successful intellectual properties, such as Mario Kart Live Home Circuit and famously, Pokemon Go. Number 6, Twisted Metal. In 1995, PlayStation released Twisted Metal, and by that year's metrics, had a hit on their hands. To the point where the game had tons of imitators. Games like Rogue Trip, Vigilante 8, and even Star Wars had its own version. Nintendo wanted a piece of the pie, seemingly more than any other innovation on this list, releasing 3 iterations of the car combat hit on their consoles in Cell Damage, Monster Jam Maximum Destruction, and Roadkill, mainly for the GameCube and Game Boy Advance. Neither of these games saw the type of success Twisted Metal did critically or commercially. Number 5, Mario Golf Super Rush. The majority of golf video games are pretty par for the course. I said the majority of golf, anyway. Most, if not all, golf games are golf sims. That was true until the release of Everybody's Golf in 2017. Adding an open map and more sandbox elements, it truly was a reinvention of the genre. Nintendo took this template and added their own Nintendo flavor on it, and just like Everybody's Golf, added explorable courses, obstructions to your golf shot, open map golf racing, although golf carts were replaced with typical Nintendo-esque power-ups and special attacks, explorable home area, and put a more story-focused approach to single player. Number 4, analog controls. Before Nintendo announced the Nintendo 64, PlayStation announced the PlayStation Analog Joystick. It was both announced and released before the Nintendo 64 was released with the thumbstick in the middle of their controller. What many don't know is that thumbstick for the Nintendo 64 is digital and not analog. This is important because in order for 3D gaming to work, the dual analog setup the PlayStation Analog Joystick had was essential, granting the ability to look around an environment and move around an environment realistically, as analog controls responded to even the most minute direction, where digital controllers were very static, left, right, up, down, diagonal, etc. PlayStation also somewhat implemented this in their face buttons, making them pressure sensitive, allowing gamers to press buttons softly, creating dynamic use cases. For example, if pressed softly, you can keep a car at a steady low speed in games like Gran Turismo and Grand Theft Auto. Without dual analog controls, modern adventure and first-person shooting games wouldn't be what they are today. If anyone remembers games like GoldenEye 007 and Perfect Dark on the Nintendo 64, as well as games like MechWarrior, we all remember the days of tank controls where the missing second analog on a Nintendo 64 was replaced by face buttons called C buttons. The panning of the camera was very stiff and you couldn't control a weapon's aim realistically. While Nintendo was brilliant to include the thumbstick, they weren't the first, but they were the first to put it in the middle of the controller, and for that, credit is due. But it was essentially useless until PlayStation implemented the dual analog thumbsticks, changing gaming for the better, as seen when Nintendo followed suit and put dual thumbsticks on the Nintendo GameCube. Number 3, Gran Turismo. The Gran Turismo series is Sony's most iconic and successful gaming franchise, and one of the more successful franchises in gaming history. For this, it became one of the more imitated and influential games ever created. No surprise, PlayStation's competitors would take their shots at the sim racing car PG genre. Many of you know about Xbox's attempt with the Forza franchise and how successful that became. What many of you don't know is Nintendo took their own chances to go at sim racing's biggest giant. And when I say many of you, I mean many of you didn't grow up in Japan in the late 90s. You see, one of the main reasons people aren't aware of Nintendo's influences is because some of the games they were influenced by were popular in Japan, but not in the West. This can be said about Nintendo's GT series. Yes, they barely changed the name. It's hard to argue it's anything more than a cash grab, as when they decided to make their iteration of the Gran Turismo series, they went to a developer only notable for creating a Gran Turismo clone at that point, a developer named MTO. And if you played their GT series and option tuning car battle, it would seem Nintendo added no input into the creation of the GT series, instead basically asking for a port of option tuning and renaming it. Starting with the GT Advance series on the Game Boy Advance, and some would argue Pocket GT on the Game Boy Color, it was followed up by the GT Pro and GT Cube on their home consoles. Although I will admit, possibly due to hardware constraints, the portable versions had a lot less realistic driving controls. Number 2, True Hybrid Gaming Console. Launching on November 14th, 2013, the PS Vita TV is one of Sony's most underrated innovations, granting you true hybrid gaming akin to the Nintendo Switch dock that allowed you to play your PS Vita games on a television with a controller natively, granting you true hybrid capabilities for your PS Vita. It also allowed you to play your PS4 remotely in any room. What separated it from the Sega Nomad and the PS1, which came out before it wasn't phased out or outdated hardware shrunken down to a portable. As at release, Sega moved on to the 32-bit era. Instead, this was contemporary hardware, allowing you to play your home console games and your portable games. Number 1, Super Mario Maker. Little Big Planet is yet another PlayStation franchise Nintendo is such a fan of, they wanted multiple versions. Whether it be the asset building of Super Mario Maker 1 and 2, or the Node and Logic Switch format of Nintendo Gaming Garage, Nintendo seemingly was very inspired by PlayStation's Little Big Planet. In fact, outside of franchise specific assets and AI behavior, I'd argue there was nothing done in Super Mario Maker 1 and 2 that wasn't already done in Little Big Planet, and that's why I decided that Super Mario Maker and Nintendo Gaming Garage is Nintendo's biggest ripoff of PlayStation. And that was my list of the top 10 times Nintendo ripped off Sony. I hope this adds some equity to the conversation, seeing as I am the first person to make this video, and reviewers never mention these inspirations in their reviews of these Nintendo games. Hope you enjoyed. I won't hold you any longer. Goodbye.